magazines and films.
Right. That's kind of what a lot of people's image is. You see all these, these candid, heavily edited photos of Britney Spears having, shaved her head to a swastika or whatever it is, this thing. And that's the image a lot of people have. And that's part of it. That's no denying that's part of it. But that's not the whole package, and that's here what I'm to demonstrate today. And also I'm demonstrating the best practices thereof, as the PowerPoint says. Now there's the sort of image a lot of us associate with pop culture journalism as this many-headed camera hype that's descending upon celebrity like this. And there are two main things I want to talk about in regard to pop culture journalism and the best practices thereof. The first is conflict of interest, and the second is independence. Now, with conflict of interest, conflict of interest is essentially when you have some sort of affiliation with the subject of your coverage as a pop culture journalist. And what causes a lot of conflict of interest in pop culture journalism is the fact that many of the subjects of the coverage are advertised on the websites or on the papers of these media outlets. Now, one of the examples I'm using here is here you go. This is a screen grab from the games journalism website known as GameSpot from a few years ago. And one thing you will notice about the screen is it's been completely taken over by this ad. Now let's rewind a little bit. Let's go to the beginning of what's happening here. This is a game called Kane and Lynch Dead Men. This was a game that, as you see, has completely taken over the GameSpot site. Now, given the mass marketing that's happening here, what kind of review score do you think this game got? Pretty good, that you would say?
I would guess based on that.
You would guess based on that, wouldn't you? Not as such. No, the game received a 6.0 out of 10. And there was, as the French say, a kerfuffle. And the gentleman who reviewed it is a gentleman named Jeff Gerstmann. Now, Jeff Gerstmann had been a high-level editor for GameSpot for years. Anyone who read the site regularly knew him. He was the fixture. And when this came out, this was massive. This was seriously a big deal that he had given the game such a low score. And there were accusations flying left and right that Gerstmann got fired as a result of this. Well, allegedly as a result of this. And it came out later that GameSpot had heavily edited Gerstmann's review after it was reposted. There were massive redactions. There were a whole paragraph that's inserted to make it look a little bit softer on this game, because many people believe that Gerstmann's firing was a result of that IDOS, the parent company of the company that developed this game, had called for either a new review or for Gerstmann's firing. And this did not reflect. This is something that people still on the internet still talk about this day when they talk about GameSpot having lost its credibility. So that's a big problem, and I think we can all see why. Now, what do we do about this? Well, there are two things that we can do. First is just to clearly verbalize your company's policy on advertisements. And it's just to give a counterexample here of what to do as opposed to what not to do. There many for example for games and music journalism or film, less so for film because you can sit down and watch a movie in one sitting. But to get a good sense of a game or to get a good sense of an album, you have to sit down with it for a while. You have to listen to most of it, play through most of it, and commonly there are deadlines, and the deadline kind of gets in the way of the deadline. You have to rush it out the door. So don't do that. But as an example of what to do is clearly verbalize your company's ad policy. Now, what that means is, at any point that you're going to be advertising something, let your readers, let your viewers know that this this bit of media that you're verbalizing, that you are advertising, is something that you are putting your trust behind, because implicitly that's what you're doing anyway. And just to give you an example, there's a site called Penny Arcade. They do comics, they do reviews of games, and they talk about games in general. And when they really liked the game Prince of Persia at the time, they spoke very highly of it when it came out. They loved it. And then the game made a sequel. The developers made a sequel, and when they were making the sequel, they asked me, "Hey, can we advertise on your site?" Because Penny Arcade's ads had historically performed very, very, very well. And Penny Arcade said, "Okay, we will run this ad for Prince of Persia: The Warrior Within." And opinions vary, but by all accounts, the game was a travesty. And Penny Arcade said as much when they talked about it. And when one of their writers came out and said afterwards that our new policy is this: any game we advertise on this site, we will have played, or at minimum seen played in front of us, and we will not advertise to you anything that we will not personally stand behind. And I think that builds trust with your readers. That builds a sense that you're out for them, that you're not out just to grab as much ad money as you can. Even though, especially online, that is how a lot of online business runs with ads. There's some people trying to move away from that model. That's largely how it runs. And that creates confidence in you with your readers, and that creates a better relationship between you and the ads that you and the companies with the ads that you do run. So even if it seems like you might be losing out on some ad revenue at first, it is worth it in the long run. And there are the other thing is, and there's going to be a conflict of interest, and you can't get around it. Just say so. Just for example, if you know my father owns just to give an example, a pretzel company, and I am a journalist covering something that happened in regards to this pretzel company. Even if I didn't talk to my father about it, I didn't, he didn't say, "Hey, son, I want to make sure that your coverage is positive, or that you put a good spin on this negative story." Even if that didn't happen, people say, "Oh, this reporter is his father runs the company. Clearly, this media outlet is in the pocket of the pretzel company. This massive pretzel media conspiracy will be laid on your shoulders." And you don't want that. That's just no way to go through life. So what you do is you say, "This reporter is the son of the owner of his pretzel company." Period. You just tell them. And a common, just little, you've all seen it in full disclosure. Am I out of time?
Keep going.
Also, dude, the clock on here says 7.5 minutes. Really? Sorry, sir, the clock on here said I had more time than he's saying I have.
Just keep going.
I'm sorry. And anyway, and the next thing, moving right along, the next thing I want to talk about is independence. Now, let me ask you guys a question. How many of you like Pixar? How many else saw Toy Story 3? Who all liked it? Pretty much everybody who saw it loved it, right? It was a fantastic film. It was the culmination of our childhood. It was revelation. Now, you might not know who this gentleman here is, but this is Armand White. Now, Armand White is what some might call a contrarian reviewer. And his review of Toy Story 3 was not exactly glowing. He called a travesty of consumerism. And this is just the sort of thing Armand White does. Someone online compiled a list of these are the movies Armand White hates, these are the movies Armand White loves, and these are films that were critical failures, critical failures and everything. And he loved them. These movies that were critically acclaimed that he hated, and a lot of audience loved that he hated. Many people online consider Armand White a troll, a contrarian, what have you. But you know what? People read him. And my point with bringing up Armand White here is that independence is always, independence is always attractive to readers. And whatever you do, whatever your pop culture journalism now ends up being, always be independent, always carve out your niche. And I'm apparently out of time, so thank you. Have a nice day.